this session, we're looking at the Dungeons & Dragons Dungeon Master's Guide. This book is fantastic, not only for the new GM, but also for a more experienced GM or DM. I use them interchangeably. The generator in this book, the adventure generator, is absolutely fantastic. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to run you through the generation of an adventure using the system, but I'm going to be looking at it from the perspective of all of the other items that I've covered in the past, including your imagination and how to tell a good story. But before we do that, remember, in order to tell a good story, there is only one story that's ever been told, and that is somebody wants something desperately and is having difficulty getting it. And usually the way I position it is that it is the villain who wants something badly and is having difficulty getting it, and it is the characters that are causing that difficulty. The generator. It asks you three questions to begin with. Where is this going to be set? Is it going to be set in a dungeon, a wilderness, or somewhere else? It's pretty specific. Let's say we're going to set it in a dungeon. A good old-fashioned dungeon crawl never goes awry. You can drop these into any campaign almost anywhere, whether it is a dungeon, a derelict starship, an asteroid mining section, whatever the situation, wherever it might be, a dungeon crawl is a great way of giving your party plenty of focus, building unity because they have to work together in order to survive, and as a GM, it allows you to explore some pretty kooky ideas. So it gives us a D20 table. We take our trusty D20, give it a roll, and we get a find information needed for a special purpose. That's pretty cryptic, but I quite like it. Oh, look at that. Step 2, the villain. The villain blurb here is fairly broad, but it gets developed later on. So don't be too specific at this point. So our D20 again, we get a 19. It is a humanoid under a curse. So the villain is a humanoid under a curse. Or if it's a science fiction setting, a genetically modified humanoid. Whatever the case might be. Already from these two clues, you should be able to build a story. The villain, somebody, wants something badly. Well, he wants to remove the curse badly, and he is having difficulty getting it because he doesn't know how to get rid of it. Perhaps. So maybe that's where the players come in order to find info for a special purpose. There is an opportunity here to add in adventure allies. If you feel that you are without enough players, so you might be only playing with 1 or 2 players and you feel that you need more, you can just quickly throw in some allies here. I'll just do this quickly to give you an idea of what is available out there. Oh, that's interesting. The villain is posing as an ally. Well, now this makes perfect sense to me. If I really quickly put this together, the villain wants to get rid of his curse. He doesn't know how to do it, so he's posing as a hero to go in with the adventurers into the dungeon to try and get the special information that will remove the curse and, of course, allow him to take over the world. Adventure introduction. This is how we start the adventure. If you remember, you should try and have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Well, here's our beginning. And this calls for a D12, which gives us an NPC the characters must obey sends them on the adventure. Now, if your players are anything like mine, I could have the God King come down onto the planet and order them to go on a mission, and they would politely decline. You need to find some kind of hook that the NPC can give them. Players very seldom respond to having authority figures order them around, unless, of course, their characters are in a military kind of structure where receiving orders makes sense and then they'll go with the flow. If they're just a ragtag bunch of people, best option is just to promise them a ton of cash. That usually motivates them to go into the deep dark dungeon. The villain's actions. How does that work? This asks for a D6. The villain has been conducting a series of serial crimes. That's interesting. The villain who commits serial crimes is a little write-up on what we can infer from this. And basically it says that the serial crime is a repeat offense. So he's constantly doing the same kinds of things. We don't yet know whether the villain is a monster or a human or an elf or a dwarf or an alien or whatever the case might be, but whatever he is continuously doing the same crime over and over and over again. Again, this is just giving us information to make our story better. Is his crime that he keeps committing over and over and over again the reason why the NPC asks the PCs to go on the mission? Or is it even better? Is the NPC villain committing these crimes repeatedly against the PCs, and then he infiltrates their group to get them to help him to remove his curse? That for me sounds a little bit more intriguing, a little bit more difficult to play off, but it's still early days yet. Let's see what happens next. It asks for another D20. Well, this one fits rather well. And this is something that I do find quite interesting with random generators, is how easily they seem to link together, which makes them, in my opinion, a good generator. The players, in order to really succeed in the dungeon, need to identify the villain's identity. And of course, this makes perfect sense if he's disguised as an NPC trying to help them. So, framing the events. Now, this is also something that a lot of GMs don't do necessarily well, is that they don't set up the environment. They simply say you're walking down the road and you see a cave. That doesn't set up any kind of sense of wonderment or of excitement or of terror that goes along with that cave. If it's a starship and you're just sailing through space and you come across a derelict starship, well, that still doesn't give me a sense of drama. There's no story in the way that you've just described that setup. So they bring in a nice little hook for you. And here we go. It's a D100. So they keep us changing our dice. And we get a procession of ghosts. Now, this is the other point that I really like about random generators. Don't dismiss the crazy. Off the top of my head, I am wondering, perhaps this procession of ghosts visit the NPCs at night, claiming injustice. Perhaps it is a procession of ghosts down the central street, which someone declares is the restless souls of all of the victims that the villain has destroyed over the past few months. Perhaps the procession of ghosts is a past, present, and future scenario. Twists bring a very nice twist, surprisingly. People often forget to throw in a twist, or they simply can't work out how to twist it. This happens in every single feature film. There are actually 3 in a 90-minute film that should take place that really change the direction in which we're going. One moment the hero wants the girl, the next moment the girl's with somebody else. That's not much of a twist these days because we all expect it. But when the girl turns out to be a boy, that then changes things. So a twist in our story is the adventurers must cooperate with a known enemy in order to achieve their goal. I did this the other day. My characters and players are busy fighting a war with an enemy race, and I decided that I wanted to get them to understand the enemy race's perspective and not just be this mass horde of evil. So I took one of the enemy race, made him a defector, and made him have to work with the PCs. It created some very interesting role-playing, especially when the PCs had to decide to save him or let him die. So I really like this twist. It's a lot of fun. I call these our moral dilemma type of situations, which make players debate and actually engage in a little bit of role-playing, which again is our ultimate goal. So they must work with an enemy. If this is the first adventure, however, you don't necessarily have a known enemy. So perhaps you might want to re-roll. On the other hand, what this should be doing is this should be saying to you, establish enemies so that you can then use them later in further sessions to either twist the story or to perhaps have them fueling this villain in the background. You are looking for freeform association links. What links point 1 to point 2, and you don't have to link them in order. It is always about looking at what you are presented with and linking it together into a story that makes sense and that can always come back to the villain wants something badly and is having difficulty getting it. Because they will have their plan. They will have their route of action to take. In other words, you've worked it out. The players need to discover what it is and prevent it from happening. So this book is really packed with just a whole range of tables, all designed to help spark your imagination and to give you options of really, really revitalizing your game and of upping your game so that you can be called master of the game. I hope you liked this module, this very brief introduction to the adventure generator within the Dungeons & Dragons Dungeon Master's Guide. If you did, click on the like button, and of course, if you want to hear more, click on that subscribe button. On a side note, we love the questions that are coming through. I hope the answers are slightly helpful. If not, keep pestering and we'll keep trying to give you as much advice as we can. I do take the questions back to my various groups that I play with to get their input. In the next module, we'll be looking at the world that I create or that I have created, and you'll discover that it's not actually mine and that it is a growing living world. Until then, happy gaming.